Welcome to Washington in Focus, powered by the Center Square and a production of America's Talking Network. I am Jeremy Lott, regional editor of the Center Square Newswire for Washington State. To support great podcasts like, for instance, this one, please donate by clicking the link in the show description. Today, I am joined by Brett Davis and Spencer Pauly. And we're gonna begin by talking about Brett with Brett because the legislature is in session. And we're just going to fire on in here.
By the way, welcome back, Jeremy.
Yeah, good to be back after a bit of a delay there.
We've been Jeremy-less for 2 weeks.
It's been a Jeremy-less 2 weeks. Yes. So anyways, we're going to jump into the first one here. The Washington State Department of Revenue's capital gains collection site goes live.
That's right.
So the site's there. The tax is being collected.
Right.
Is it constitutional, Brett?
That's what the Supreme Court is mulling even as we speak.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, oral arguments on that case began late last month, and we're all still waiting. So apparently sometime later this year, the Supreme Court will rule. But in the meantime, the Department of Revenue is moving full speed ahead with getting ready to collect the tax. I guess it was a pre-Valentine's Day gift. You know, it went live on February 13th, so it's a big Valentine from the Department of Revenue.
I mean, that's how else can the taxman say that he loves you? Right?
That's right. So I reached out to the DOR to ask about, what happens exactly if this is declared unconstitutional? In terms of
does the website go away?
I talked to Beverly Critchfield. She's a communications person over there, and she said if necessary, that the Department of Revenue would begin, issuing refunds as soon as they receive the official Supreme Court order, on that decision if they rendered it, unconstitutional. She said they can process about 400 to 600 refunds a week, which seems like a lot, but given how many people would have to pay the tax, who knows? Yeah,
I mean, it's kind of a niche tax in the sense that it's, you have to have $250,000 a year in income of, or in capital gains income, and I don't know how many people in this state that applies to.
Small number,
but I don't assume it's millions. You know, so I don't know. We'll see how that goes. When do we expect the Supreme Court to say one way or the other at this point?
I haven't seen any specific timeline. I've just heard, later this year. It could be months, probably going to be months from what I understand, but no firm date that I've come across or been told about.
Is it even possible that they would dither until next year? Is that, a precedent or not?
I don't think so. Most of what I've seen, heard, and read is sometime later this year, maybe in the spring or summer. But
they can also issue, once in a while they can issue an order and say, look, the reasoning is coming later.
True.
That's one thing that was thrown out as a possibility, but I think that seems increasingly unlikely as they've let these deadlines go whooshing by.
Right.
So
people want an answer. At some point, they're going to have to make a ruling.
Indeed. So our next story is a substitute police reform bill passes out of a House committee.
Yes.
Back us up. Pretend we don't know anything about this issue. What is this police pursuit thing about, Brett?
So this would be legislation that would scale back a police reform pursuit. It passed out of the committee yesterday. So it's a substitute House Bill 1363. It would basically restore the reasonable suspicion standard for police to engage in vehicular pursuits, but it would limit it to certain crimes like violent crimes, sex offenses, vehicular assault, domestic violence, escape, and DUIs. So it's a sort of a narrowing of trying to,
Is car theft would that possibly be among the new, category of things?
I did not see it on the list. That list.
I just wonder if the things you listed, if one of those could be kind of like, shoehorned into car theft or not.
Maybe. See which one would best be. I don't know. Is vehicular assault? I guess it's using a car to assault somebody, so maybe you could use that.
Yeah,
they insulted my feelings by stealing my car.
They assaulted people by stealing their stuff. I don't know.
And also another interesting part of the substitute legislation was the fact that there's a clause in it that it will sunset by July 1, 2025 if no solution is offered in the future. It'll just go back to the way it is now.
Mm-hmm.
So,
okay.
I guess that's progress in this state. So
what they're trying to do is thread the needle,
yes.
right? And the needle is in the Senate, and the needle has a name. And what is her name?
Manka Dhingra.
Okay. So she's what's the Senate? It's the Blonde Justice Committee or something like that. Yeah, she's
the committee on the brain. Sometimes I lose track of which committee is what.
She's the chair of that committee, yes. And she not completely on her own, but she is standing very firmly in favor of the current law. And the House passed one. Sorry, I guess it was passed out of committee, maybe not passed by the whole House.
Right, just out of committee.
They passed one, police pursuit reform bill earlier, and could have got it through the House, but Dhingra is basically saying no. And so they went back to the drawing board and said, let's do something narrower that she's going to have a harder time saying no to.
Right.
Is that fairly accurate? And actually, Jay Inslee kind of spoke to this in a press conference that you wrote about yesterday. Where he said, "Hey, I'm very open to changing the law. We do understand that there are problems with it, but you have to. The legislature has to put something on my desk."
Yes.
Wink, wink.
A
guys.
Not so subtle hint. He said he can't sign a bill if they don't send him one.
I got to have a bill to sign.
That's right.
Right. Yeah. So that's what our governor said. So there was also another aspect of this story that was it kind of highlighted our. We've done a lot of reporting on this issue, and some of it's actually been somewhat influential. And specifically, Jenny Graham, I believe, a representative from Spokane, was talking about testimony that had been offered. Talking about how there had been a dramatic drop off between when we had the previous a regime in place and the new law that limits chases, and how it's like 73% drop off, and we published criticism of that, the study that's honestly Dhingra and a lot of other people were relying on to say, oh wow, this is amazing. It went dark for about 24 hours. It was taken off the internet. It was returned in an altered form that admitted that it still said there was a dramatic drop off, but that was less than what was originally found, that was one of the things that was actually called out by a representative during the committee meeting. So that was kind of fun.
Yes.
So our next story is Representative Fitzgibbon bill to help Representative Fitzgibbon bill to help men, boys too focused on historically most advantaged. Yeah, that's one of those ones that just does not translate well to radio because there's so much punctuation in it.
Doesn't roll off the tongue.
Yeah, it's
it looked better when I wrote it. Visually it appealed to me, but
yeah, it works. If you're reading this headline, it slaps. When I'm reading it on the air, less slappy. So yeah, talk to me about what's the issue here, and I want to save the best for last. So just talk about the issue, and then we're going to talk about the issue.
Right. So House Bill 1270 would create a commission on the well-being of boys and men. It would focus on things that disproportionately impact men, like suicide and gun violence. And Rep. Joe Fitzgibbon was asked by a reporter about why this bill is not really gaining any traction in the legislature. And he said he wanted to be careful about what solutions that they
Can I read his full quote here because it's amazing?
Please do.
I think we want to be really careful that the solutions that we bring forward to help reduce incidents of, for example, youth suicide or gun violence are solutions that we don't narrowcast to just the segment of our society that's been historically most advantaged, the House Majority Leader said. Well, we know that in some ways, men and boys are facing some challenges that are more acute relative to girls and women than they have been in the past. And non-binary folks tend to be the folks who face the greatest challenges, whether in terms of employment, discrimination, violence. And I think we generally take the outlook that solutions to, for example, gun violence would benefit boys, girls, non-binary folks. And he concluded, and that's the approach, that, I think both Chair Ramos and other members of our caucus have taken to solving some of those problems, which is to say not to solve it.
It was just an odd response. It was at a press conference. I just, happened to catch it, and I thought it was, why would you inject that into this? I mean, if you had a bill that was focused on, women and girls in terms of like, I don't know, domestic violence and rape, would you be upset that it was just focused on females? It just seems applicable. It seems relevant.
And so you asked some questions.
I did. I asked him I reached out to his office and his legislative aide and asked if he, stood by those comments and, said it kind of looked like from the outside looking in, he was, needlessly inserting, identity politics into an issue. And he accidentally got back to me is probably the best way to put it.
So you asked both Mary Dye, who is the representative who sponsored this legislation that isn't making traction that he was commenting on, and Fitzgibbon about his remarks.
Yes.
She didn't respond at the time.
At the time, right.
And then we wrote, Fitzgibbon did, but likely by accident. Here is the conclusion of the story. Quote, I'll ignore this guy, Fitzgibbon said in an email that seemed meant only for his legislative assistant.
I guess he accidentally hit the reply all key.
Yeah.
I mean, who among us hasn't done that? It was a gift for me. I'm like, well, I'm going to use this.
Yeah, don't you hate it when you accidentally tell people exactly what you think about them? So
I wonder what kind of response I'll get, or if I'll get one at all, if I ever try to get in contact with him again about other stories in the future. So,
well, you should just go up to him when you're in Olympia next time and say, "Hey, would you give this guy a comment?"
Right. I guess not everyone likes me. On the plus side, when I was in Olympia this week, one of the security guards that was letting me into an office, he recognized my name and said he enjoyed my work. So that was an unexpected compliment. So
we like it. Yes. We like those unexpected compliments. So
I appreciate that.
Now we're going to move to some stories by Spencer, but with some commentary by Brett. Spencer, you have a piece here titled Reagan Dunn moves to rehire unvaccinated.
There you go.
Unvaccinated. What is that? Let's try that again. Reagan Dunn moves to rehire unvaccinated King County workers affected by dropped mandate. Who is Reagan Dunn? Talk to me about this mandate being dropped and what he's trying to do.
So Reagan Dunn is a Republican King County council member.
There's not many of those, right?
Not many. Since February 6th, Sale and King County both dropped their mandated vaccine requirement for city and county employees. Mm-hmm. And so Reagan Dunn made it his mission to rehire some. And so some statistics I have here is since that mandate was dropped, or since it was enacted in August 2021, 281 employees in the county were separated, and that includes 33 in the sheriff's office. Okay. And so now the sheriff's office has 120 vacant positions now. And with that being said, I think Reagan Dunn's just kind of looking to rehire them as a priority. So he's asking with this measure of his to, let me say that again. He's asking with this proposition of his to have the King County Executive Dow Constantine, prioritize rehiring some of these people if possible. Yeah.
And is that he gotten a good or an indifferent reception so far?
Oh, well, he hasn't introduced it yet. He's scheduled to do it next week at the King County Council meeting.
Oh, that'll be an interesting meeting to cover.
Yeah, definitely. So I'm interested to see what the other council members say about this and if they support this.
Yeah. So, it looks like in Washington State, we're finally getting over a lot of the COVID stuff, and we're King County, the epicenter of I don't know what I'm going to use a charged term just because I can't think of a better one. COVID alarmism, is saying, chill out, man. And, they're going to maybe even rehire some of these people. And, at the state level, we've relaxed the COVID emergency is over. That was our Halloween treat. Right. So what, do you think that, maybe the rest of the state could help to get some of the employees that were separated back by, following King County's lead here? What do you think of that, Brett?
Well, Jay Inslee held a press conference yesterday, and he was asked about this. A reporter specifically mentioned what was going on in Seattle and King County, and the governor seemed unmoved by that. He's going to stick with the vaccine mandate requirement for state employees. He touted the effectiveness of the vaccine in terms of, lessening your chances of being hospitalized or dying, and said basically he was doing it to promote a healthy workforce because if, you come down with COVID, you can't work, and, he wants people to be able to work. So looks like the state level vaccine mandate is here to stay for the foreseeable future.
Sure. I just wonder, he's Jay Inslee is what, three times, 4 times tapped, and he still got COVID, right?
I think he's had it multiple times, if I recall.
So did, same with Bob Ferguson, same with Denny Heck, the, lieutenant governor. I don't know. I just would think that going through some of that themselves, even after they got all the mandates, might perhaps change their thinking a little bit on this issue, but that at this point doesn't seem to be the case. All right, so our next story, Spencer, is Seattle Police Department changing shift schedule to help a staff shortage issue. How is the SPD changing its shifts to make up the difference in quite a few officers down?
Yeah, so basically the previous shift schedule for officers was 4 days on with 9-hour shifts, and they would have 2 days off.
Okay.
But as of, I believe, Tuesday, the schedule is shifted to 4 days on with 10-hour shifts, and they get 3 days off instead.
Okay.
This was kind of announced. It was brought up by Police Chief Adrian Diaz when he was presenting to the Seattle City Council the 2022 crime report. But during the presentation, he just told them about how the schedule change will help overlap staff during peak hours for crime. That's 2 a.m. to 5 a.m.
Okay.
Is when you see peak crime.
But I was going to wonder, because numerically that's fewer. I think that's fewer hours, but I guess if you hit the right hours, it helps.
Yeah. And he said that this schedule shift was to kind of keep with the competitive market within the King County region. I believe other city police departments are doing this scheduling because, having 3 days off could be appealing to, potential police officers.
How many people here would like 3 days off a week? I'm raising my hand. You guys?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, it is a 3-day weekend for us this weekend.
Yeah. I mean,
good time,
but every
Jeremy.
weekend. Imagine that's every weekend.
If you had President's Day every week.
That's right. Every day, every week. Yeah. Anyways, every Monday is President's Day.
But I've covered this before where Seattle Police Department's had a huge, drop in officer shortage and whatnot.
Yeah.
And basically this just is a way to help, entice people to come to Seattle and be a police officer,
okay.
Which,
indeed
might be hard. I don't know.
Okay. And then our final story of the day is initial results for Seattle's Social Housing Authority measure reveal no clear winners yet. This was earlier in the week. Has it been officially declared yet, or is it? I know it's trending, yes, but what's the latest on this?
So right now the measure is at 54% approved, so it's not clear yet. But what's interesting is the results show that only 21% of registered voters have turned in their ballots. But, we've talked about this before where, this state just takes a long time to count their ballots. So hopefully that number goes up, but it is kind of concerning just to see the small amount of people voting.
Yeah. And this was the only measure on the ballot. So they didn't have any other reason to, the elections where you have candidates and measures and stuff, even if you don't care about, let's say, whoever the judge is, you might, care about who the representative is and vote for the judge anyways, right? Or you might care about a measure and vote for the, this politician, or you might care about a judge and vote for a measure or whatever. I mean, there's any combination of these things. It's a bundled thing. But when you have this just one thing and only one thing, I can understand where it's a little bit more niche.
And that's where I talked to some people out here in Seattle if they did vote or not. And the ones that said they didn't, well, first off, I won't say their names, but they sent me a video of them throwing away their roommates' ballots in the trash can saying, oops, too late.
Felony!
And then the other said he just didn't decide to vote because he just didn't see it as an important election and that he just didn't know about it. And if he deemed it, relevant to his life, he would have voted instead. But
voter apathy.
Yeah.
But I should probably explain what the measure is.
That's what I was going to say. Talk about the measure and so the measure has to do with affordable housing. Talk about the measure, and then let's talk a little bit about actually affordable housing. So go.
Yeah. So it creates a social housing authority that would be in charge of using municipal bonding and any other supplemental city funds that would be given through the city council to develop social housing developments. And so what this means is that any resident at these developments would not have to pay more than 30% of their income, regardless of how rent changes or whatnot. And this is a way just to promote more affordable housing that, is prominent in Seattle and King County. Now, opposers say that this just crowds the market because you have, I believe, over 30 nonprofit organizations in Seattle trying to create these social or affordable housing developments.
Yeah, and then when you do something like this, there's actually there's a term that social scientists use for it, or actually economists too, crowding out. When the government takes over something that a bunch of private actors previously did, a lot of times they just go away. Mm-hmm. So anyways, keep going.
So yeah, that's it basically. But I've looked at a study by the Washington Policy Center in which it talked about previous government efforts that were supposed to, increase affordable housing, but instead maybe have harmed just the cost of, rent out here. Yeah. This includes, for example, the Growth Management Act, which was supposed to promote density in, cities like Seattle by preventing affordable housing being built in open spaces. Yeah. But instead, the
idea was to build up rather than out.
Yes.
Basically.
And
but that's just not how it's worked out. There's just been less building, period.
Yep. So far this measure has only received 21%, and it hasn't been decided yet, but so far it's trending upwards towards approving.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Been fun. That's all the time we have for this week on Washington in Focus. Thanks for hanging with me, Brett and Spencer. Make sure to subscribe to Washington in Focus wherever you get your podcasts. And we will be back next week with more great podcasts.